Hello, I'm Paul Fenawalt, the Missouri School Boards Association, Special Advisor to the Missouri Center for Education Safety. And today we're in webinar number 6 in Environmental Health for Education series. I'm joined with Dave Thompson from the Green Clean Institute, and today we're going to be talking about the Missouri Green Cleaning Guidelines and Specifications for schools.
What you can see here is that we have our webinars that we do every month. We archive them on this website. As Paul said, we're in number 6. You can see that there's 5 webinars that have been archived. We encourage you, if you haven't seen this webinar series up to now, we welcome you this morning, and we would ask you to stay with us for the next 30 minutes, and we'll do this one live. If you can't catch it live, you can always get the archived version.
Well, David or I will talk a little bit more at the end of this webinar, but again, if you want to take this webinar series and actually receive a certificate showing participation in the webinar series, that's available to you, and you can go back and take the previous webinars, listen to them, and then get the certificate for the whole series. It's not too late to do that. Today we're going to again be talking about Missouri Green Cleaning Guidelines and Specifications for Schools. As you know, Missouri has a green cleaning guideline that was adopted a couple years ago, back in 2009, and there was a lot of thought that went into that. And again, it gives you some standard principles and guidelines, some basics about how you should be thinking about cleaning green in your schools and to promote environmental health and environmental safety.
What you can see here, Paul, is we actually put these together back in 2008. I was very pleased to be a part of the subcommittees that developed this law. In 2009, it actually went into effect, and you can see here there's many different things, many different issues that we talked about. The document's about 25 pages long. As you can see, what we've done is we go through our slides this morning. I've tried to put on here the relative pages, so if you actually get a document, this document, have it, you can match the slides up with the pages. We are not going to be able to talk about all 24 of these pages today, Paul, but we'll try to do some highlights as we go through it. And you know, this actually was part of a State Bill 1181, page 22. It was part of an energy bill, actually. So a lot of people never did find it, and one of the things is that in 2009, when this came into effect, Tom Quinn, he was with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Missouri. He actually put out this letter, and one of the things that it states here is, you notice that it says the law requires that school districts disseminate this document to every school. Well, quite honestly, since 2009, I worked with many schools, and they had absolutely no idea that it even existed, let alone had ever seen it. And quite unfortunately, that's a tragedy for our state.
One of the things I'd like to stress to the viewers is that if you haven't seen this document, it's very easy to find. You can do a web search for it, Google it if you would, and you can find it, pull it up. It's a relatively small document size, so it's easy to download even if you have a slow connection, but then take it and read it. It's kind of refreshing to actually read a piece of that came out of a legislative body that actually makes sense. It's easy to read, and it really gives you a basic outline how you can actually do a better job promoting environmental health in your schools. Again, the bottom line is this isn't about rules and regulations. This is about doing the right thing and ensuring that your schools are healthy. Just some very good basic things in here that if you follow this, and as we get further into this webinar, talking about it doesn't cost money to clean green, it doesn't cost money to be environmentally safe and healthy.
Well, I think, and that was one of the points that we really want to put in it, Paul, is that, you know, the first thing that you'll find on page 3 of the document is that it's a shared responsibility. I'm not going to read everything that it says here per verbatim, but our basic impetus in this here was to make sure that everybody understood that everybody was included in this program. And it states right here, everyone who uses the building, including students, parents, teachers, administrators, support staff, outside contractors. They all play a role in environmental health. And it doesn't matter what part of the United States that you're in, whether you're in a private school, a parochial school, or a public school, it's the same issue. And it's very critical that we understand that this is a short-term thing, work that we can do, but there's a long-term effects to this. And there's success in it, but it doesn't happen today. It takes many years. Some of the webinars we've already done, you've heard from some of the people that have been doing this 8 to 15 years. Don't be discouraged that you're just getting started. There's long-term success, but don't look for the short reward.
And I agree with you 100%, David, that it needs to have a commitment of everybody in that school, from the not only the custodial staff, but also the leadership in the school, the teachers, and even the students to be involved. If you just only have a small segment, the custodial staff, committed to cleaning, green, and promoting environmental health in the school, we're going to fail miserably. You've got to have everyone involved in that.
Well, and that's what the second part of that statement was in promoting the stewardship. You know, it's one thing to know it, but you have to communicate. And part of our three things we always talk about, Paul, is information, education, and communication. And right here it says communicate with administrators, staff, teachers, students, parents, visitors, and the vendors about your green cleaning. I have two schools that are already in the program right here in Missouri, and on their front door they have our seal that identifies to everybody that's coming in that they're a green school. I just saw an RFP from a school that before they sent out the bid for their products and their chemicals, they actually have a 14 item list of everything they're doing green. This is what we need to do. We need to communicate this. It's not just knowing it, you've got to let people know. Paul, I think there's a purpose for why we do this.
Yes, I think there is. Again, we have vulnerable populations out there in our schools. Again, they're human beings, and they're impacted by the quality of the air. They're impacted by the presence of hazardous materials and chemicals. And the whole idea is to make sure that we are facilitating a healthy environment for not only the students, but the staff, and then the community who come into the school every day. As you pointed out before, over approximately a third of our population in the community passes through the school in any given day. And it's very important that we have healthy environments there. And if we can make them healthier, we ought to be obligated to do that.
Well, and you're very right. We don't realize, I think a lot of schools don't realize how much of the general population actually use their facilities every day. You that are in the schools, I'm sure that you recognize that, but a lot of other folks don't. And one of the things that it says here in the law on page 5 is that there's going to be new and different cleaning processes that are likely going to be involved. And this is the part that's very, very important. The processes should be reviewed, and the employees should be provided with the appropriate education and training of how to implement. These guidelines are simply that. They're just simply guidance for you. They're not implementation standards. You read this whole document, it doesn't tell you how to do it, it tells you what to use. There's a lot of interpretation that gets missed, and even the ones that have gotten it so far are kind of lost. And that's why one of the things that we do at the Institute is we have our 180 best practice standards. What this standards does is it helps you to identify, and as we go through this morning, you'll see a number of different things that will help you to track what you're doing, and one of those things is the education. Paul, later in the webinar, you'll talk about the program we're going to do in October, but it goes to educating the people with the implementation ideas, with these standards, so that once they get the products, they can do this. We'll talk more about that as we go through this morning.
And again, I think, as you mentioned, these guidelines are just that. They're guidelines. They're not there to drive you with a stick. They're to set some standards and show some leadership that you can ascribe to and rise to. It's not a saying you have to do this and this and this. It just sets some broad guidelines. So as time changes, things change, these guidelines can still apply.
And Paul, exactly to your point, there are some preferable attributes. You'll find these on page 9. Preferable. It means what you should look for if you're trying to do the very best. And I think this goes back to what you just said. We're not saying you have to do anything. Here's a list of maybe 8 things. One of the first things on the list, is no added dyes or fragrance in your product. You know, fragrance makes us feel good sometimes, but it has absolutely nothing to do with cleaning. And dyes, you know, just because a product is blue or purple or orange doesn't mean it cleans. And a lot of times what we're finding is our new surfaces that we have, and even some of the old ones, have been permanently stained and dyed, and now we have hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have to spend because we had a dye in a product. It had nothing to do with it. So we're trying to say use these right things. Another thing is use products that are designed for cold water. It conserves energy. Our products don't have to have hot water to work anymore. It's a change in our mindset. It's a change in the behavioral pattern that we have. And this is why the law stated that we have to have education before we implement. If you try to use some of the new products with hot water, it actually hurts them. It doesn't work. It makes more foam and it creates more issues. So you guys that are out there that are working with these products, understand these are here to help you understand what to do when you get a product. There's preferable attributes with everything. And one of those is to limit the use of disinfectants where people are likely to come in contact with contaminated surfaces. And later in this webinar this morning, we're going to show you some of the reason, but it said many general purpose cleaning tasks, you know, like cleaning floors and other services that have minimal hand contact, they don't need the use of disinfectants. Why are we using disinfectants on a lot of our floors and making sticky floors? We've talked about that in our infection prevention webinar. You know, we need to conduct training on the proper use of these products. The chemicals should be dispensed through a metering system, not the glug, because nobody uses a measuring cup. And the biggest thing I find on here is, gosh, do you know what the label says? Are you using it in accordance to what the label instructions are?
And I think, David, you and I discussed earlier, so often we have people that use these products, and it's often for years and years and years, and yet they don't even take the time even once to read the label. And it'd be surprising sometimes the information you find on that label.
Well, and when you follow that thought process along there, Paul, one of the things that they put into the law is the use of cleaning supplies by non-custodial staff members. I'm not going to address who those are. You watching, you know who they are. But we should provide the school staff with small quantities of qualified general purpose cleaners for minor cleaning needs. These are products that you are using, you're distributing, you have the safety data sheets, you have control of what's being used. Because if you're doing green, if you're doing all the right things and these non-custodial staff members use anything and everything, then you have effectively ruined your program. On item E here it says, staff should be discouraged from bringing in and using products from home. You know what? In any green program that I have helped implement in the last 5 years, this has been one of the hardest things to do.
I can imagine. Again, David, as you know, my wife was a school teacher in the classroom for 26 years in Missouri schools. And so often, yeah, again, she's wanting to do the right thing, but not thinking she would bring stuff from home to clean up spills in the classroom, so that she wouldn't have to involve the custodial staff and one thing or another. And was that the smart thing to do? Well, maybe it wasn't in every instance. Maybe she should have possibly coordinated a little bit with the custodial staff to make sure that whatever she was using was the appropriate thing. And again, I think this whole webinar series will help us to educate and sensitize the whole school, the staff, the students, the leadership, as well as the custodial staff to some of these issues.
Well, and I think the thing is once that you learn where to look and what to look for, here's 4, and that's not all of them, but here's 4 of some of the most recognized labels for product certification. This would help you to learn which ones, but even that doesn't give you the exact. That's why an educated staff is going to know how to look at these labels and then look further. As we'll talk this morning, there's other things other than just a label. And in the very first thing, when they started talking about products and actually looking at the products rather than the overview, air fresheners was the very first thing listed. Several individuals, when we developed the law, had a real issue with this, and I applaud their reasons. And it says here that some air fresheners contain ingredients that can cause respiratory irritation and inhibit lung capacity. I can tell you, as a chronic asthmatic myself, I completely understand this. even if you don't have an immediate reaction, your body still is reacting to this, and over a period of time, you're having issues from what you're smelling. Very interesting, because our next webinar that we're going to do next month is on I Can't Breathe, and it really talks more about this. So I won't talk too much about it today, but if you think you need to use an air freshener, maybe there's not good ventilation.
Yeah, and again, I think it's so true that the smell of clean is no smell at all. That's something that I think sometimes we forget about. That if you're not smelling something, maybe you already have it's clean there.
Well, a lot of times we say if you're covering it up with a smell, then you haven't removed the problem. So whenever you start talking about what we're using to clean and everything, that we've given you a pH chart here. We're going to talk about this here in the next few slides. The pH of 7, pure water, is actually where we want to be. If you think of things like ammonia, here's ammonia at an 11. And if you notice, this is 10,000 times stronger than water. 10,000 times more irritations to your body and to your health. And this is why we call this environmental health services. We are providing a service, and if you do not know how these chemicals affect human health, you're doing something, well, first and foremost, to your own health. You're the one using the product. So as we go on here, the first thing that they talk about is disinfectants and sanitizers. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but as we're talking about pH, you notice that they put into the law that the pH of your disinfectant or your sanitizer needs to be closer to 7 rather than ones that are on the extreme sides closer to 1 or 14. And here again, no dyes or fragrances. If they put this into the law, and this is being used in numbers of states all over the country, there's got to be something right about it. So when you talk about floor finishes, this is on page 14 of the law. You'll also find that they talk about using floor finishes that are more durable. It requires less buffing and restoring, and that requires less reapplication, and they're more durable, more maintenance and less refinishing. That the product should last 3 to 5 years. So one of the things that we've done is in our 180 program, which we talked about, for doing these things that are in the law, we're going to give you points for them. When you check off here, you get points for it. If you actually do chemical-free stripping, you get points. If you use protective equipment, you know what, this seems like a no-brainer, but I've seen people walking around doing floors and strippers, and they don't have any protective equipment on at all.
Well, again, I think, David, that one of the things you're talking about here, your 180 best practices that the Green Clean Institute has, is just a great way to be able to measure what you're doing. Again, you can do green cleaning, but being able to actually measure that and be able to demonstrate it to others and take some pride in that, that's really important. And I know we've got a couple schools in the state of Missouri have already done this, and we're looking to get other schools involved, actually looking to get involved in your program. But it's just a great way to measure what you're doing. And then gauge where do you need improvement yet, what other things can you do to get to a higher level of certification.
Well, understanding where you're at is benchmarking what we're doing, and I know a lot of people are talking about microfiber, and it's part of the law now, and it talks about different weaves of microfiber, that microfiber traps the dust and the dirt particles and makes it an ideal material for cleaning. And one of the things that we have is we have a webinar series here that we've done, and you can go in and you can find these courses, and here's Understanding Microfibers. There actually is a webinar on understanding microfibers. So you know what, folks, there's all kinds of information. Go to our website, you can find that information whenever you need to. It's always there, ready and waiting for you to just take a part of. When you talk about wood gym floor finishes, I don't know if you've been around too much during the summer. I'm sure with your wife at school you were, but extremely durable products, they can be very expensive to replace. And most of the time these coatings are hazardous when they're drying and they're curing. So it's like after they come in, they do the gym floor for like 2 to 3 weeks, that stuff is still letting off vapors. I have a school that's here in Missouri that's part of the program, and one of the things that they do is they actually put a sign on the outside of the door alerting people like myself that have allergic reactions that there is something going on in the building that may affect their respiratory system. And that way they know before they enter. You know, it's a simple practice. Maybe you didn't change. Maybe you can't change your floor finish that you're using in the gym. You should, if you can, we would advise you to do that. But if you can't, at least let people know it's a practice. It didn't cost you any money to do that.
That's exactly right, David. I was going to say that doesn't cost you any money to put that sign up there. And again, you're promoting environmental health by doing that.
And that's part of green cleaning. It's not always changing the product. We encourage you to do that if you can, but at least change the practice. Help people know what's going on. So whenever you come to getting your cleaning equipment, there's a purchase. You know, at some point, you're going to be where you need to replace a piece of equipment. And you know, when you talk about auto scrubbers or battery operated equipment, one of the things we've always had is we've had batteries that were full of lead acid, and this acid and water, whenever it's charged, vaporizes, and there's smells that come out of them. Well, in the law it says that they should be now equipped with environmentally preferable sealed batteries such as gel and AGM, and that the sound level of these units should be less than 70 dB. Now, that doesn't mean that you've got to run out and change all of your equipment. It means that whenever it fails, this is what you want to use. In other words, a preferable attribute. We're not saying you need to go spend a lot of money right now, but when you do, use this as a guideline. And to that point, in our 180 best practices, we've actually given you points when you follow the law. I mean, what can be so much easier? It even says sound level below 70 dB. If you do those two things, you've gotten points as well as you've helped the environment. Additionally, whenever you're replacing the carpet vacuums and your carpet cleaning equipment, you want to look for this CRI label. There's different, just like any other certification programs, there's bronze, gold, silver. You can look for those when you get there. But if you've used a unit like this that has this, it's their seal of approval that this machine works at its most efficient, and it is more environmentally safe than a machine that does not have the label. When you go to your equipment maintenance, one of the things, and this is what I will tell you right now, folks, I am the one that had this put in. It wasn't part of the discussion. But you know, the thing is, if we require all these things, you know, most people never document this. And we really believe that you've got to document what you're doing or you lose track of what it is. I mean, when was the last time you purchased that piece of equipment? You know, what was the repair on it? Are you actually doing what you can to make sure that piece of equipment's, you know, lasting and doing its job? We're going to show you something here, labor versus supplies, and how much, if you do not take care of the machines, how much it influences your whole labor budget, which is much more expensive than the machine ever was.
Kind of the concept of penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah, well, and that saying stays true because it is. So whenever you buy these pieces of equipment that are battery operated, cord electric, and you're burnishing the floors, they need to have guards around them. They need to have vacuums. And this is to capture that fine particulate that is being sanded off the floor. Even if you don't have green floor finish on the floor, even if you do have green floor finish on the floor, you're still polishing off plastic. And we don't want to be breathing that plastic in. We don't want to have it all over our furniture and everything. And if you don't have the vacuums or the guards, it's going into the air. Now it's going into the HVAC system, costing you more money. So you can read more about that in the law. It really goes into more detail. One of the things that on page 18 you'll find is the disposal of material, and we always think about trash. You look at the very first thing. It says, ensure that trash, especially that which contains food waste, is removed frequently and is not left in buildings overnight. I did a survey of a school district here in Missouri not too long ago, and one of the things I found out was that in the principal's office, in the front offices, and several of the classrooms, they didn't empty the trash until 6 o'clock the next morning. It was a gourmet for all of the rodents all night long. So part of integrated pest management is actually doing these things, removing the food source, much like we do whenever we're cleaning a surface to remove bacteria. We remove the food sources and we remove the pest. We actually give you points if you do that in our 180 system. Get hold of us and we'll help you find where you can get that information at. As we just talked about, whenever you're working into restrooms, we want to make sure that your sanitizing solution is prepared properly and it's remixed when required. I was just with some clients yesterday that simply didn't understand that, once you mix up a spray bottle of disinfectant, they thought it was good forever. It's not. You have to remix this product. It doesn't work. We're mixing it with our city water, or in some cases our rural water, and as much as I try, there's still stuff in that water, and this is why your disinfectant becomes ineffective after a period of time.
But again, it's a very simple thing. You don't have to throw the whole container out necessarily. You just simply mix it up again.
And in some cases, that's true. Now, one of the things that you're going to do here is we want to look at the doorknobs, light switches, door handles. These are the high touch points where everybody is touching. This is number one area that you should be looking for. And in a lot of these cases, it's frequently eliminating moisture. Moisture is a big thing that drives bacteria to grow and to spread. And when you simply wipe it, you're removing all of that food source, just like we were talking about the pest. And we'll talk more about that, but in the 180, we're actually going to give you points whenever you can prove that you're doing this. Now, we're not going to go into this today. We'll touch on this later, but ATP testing is a way that you can see on the handles, the dispensers, and that you have a record of it. We give you points for doing these things. So it's not like, like you said earlier, it's not like we don't have a baseball bat over your head. We're not going to, you're not going to lose money in your program because you didn't do it. But if you do it, we're going to reward you. We're going to recognize, and as we go through the webinar program, you'll understand why this is very important. When we started talking about this pest control and everything, I want you to understand that one of the things is that in the law, it even states here that because disinfectants kill organisms, they are regulated as pesticides under the FIFRA Act. And what this means is that manufacturers can't make a green or environmentally sensitive disinfectant. It doesn't exist because you're talking about a toxic product. So when you think about the disinfectant you're using, it's rated from FIFRA by the EPA as a toxin, and that's how they rate these. So you've got to think, if you're leaving a film of this disinfectant on the surface, do I really want to be touching that? This is why we want you to be very concerned about these things, because what disinfectants need to do is they need to remove soil from the surface before they can become effective, and they should not be used as a substitute for thorough cleaning. Many people feel that if they just simply disinfect it, they don't really have to clean very hard, and that's not true. You've got to clean that surface prior to using the disinfectant in most cases, because the product labeling on these products say that it's only good in the presence of so much a load of soil. And I think we did this in one of our couple of webinars back. We actually showed a picture of all of the soil and then what you can't see. Well, if you don't remove all of that soil first, the product simply can't work. And I've seen a disinfecting bucket, by what people say, and that bucket is so dirty, oh, but I've got a disinfectant in it. Folks, I gotta tell you, that disinfectant's not working. It's quit working, and you're not even cleaning right. So it's not just because you're using it, it's how you use it. We're going to go on here with the dust mops, and then we switch gears a little bit from disinfecting, but dust mops, and the reason we're talking about dust mopping and dusting in general is that dust carries moisture. It carries a lot of the pathogens that we're talking about, and dust floats everywhere. I mean, it just covers us. And one of the other things is you're the one breathing it in. So anytime you stir up dust, you're picking that dust up, breathing it in, and now your body becomes an incubator for these pathogens. So what we're wanting you to do is to use preferably microfiber. But it says here to use the proper treatment. Well, the proper treatment on microfiber is water. You don't have to buy another chemical. So if you're using microfiber, don't go and buy another chemical and increase your budget. Just use water.
One of the things, David, I was really shocked to learn in the discussion you and I had prior to this webinar is that dust, how long that hangs in the air. And you pointed out that it takes what?
1 hour for 1 foot
to settle.
So if you're up above your head and you're dusting up here and the dust is coming down, who's the first one breathing it? Yeah, me, the worker. So you folks that are out there, don't use feather dusters. Use a vacuum. Why? You've got the CRI vacuum. It's going to suck it in. The air it emits is going to be better for your health. And by the way, you know, there's a lot of us that clean in schools when there's people in the school building. So you're actually affecting not only your own health, but the health of everybody else that's coming through that building. Now, when we start using these chemicals, we talked about this, about reading the label and everything. And one of the things they put in the law here is there's several things under dilution of chemicals. But one of the things that we want to point out is that you need to review the MSDS sheets. Now, that's been up until now. By the end of this year, there's a new program that's coming in place. You may not have heard this, and if this is the first time, I'm going to try to help you out a little bit here. If you go to our site, we have a program, and in October, if you want to come to our convention, we're going to actually be talking about this. But one of the things that you're going to find is the new globally, gosh, it's so new I even forget what the name is, globally harmonized system. Got to learn this myself too. And what you're going to see here, folks, is that these new pictures are going to be on the products. And where we used to think that a 1 or a 0 was safe, now 1 is going to be most severe, and 4 is actually going to be less severe. This is the new program. By the end of this year, you need to be educated on that. And this is part of our new courses that we'll have and we'll be training this October on. So we just want to let you know that it's here. Not something you need to be concerned about today, but by 2015, I believe, it will completely change over. So we've got about a year to work with it, but it's something you need to be thinking about now. When you start talking about general floor care, we start talking about carpets. We've talked about the CRI vacuums. But one of the things that's very interesting here is that it says ensure that the vacuums are in good working order and using the appropriate bags and filters. Well, you know, if you have a CRI vacuum, it's going to have a HEPA filter in it. The HEPA filter has to be changed minimally twice a year. So if you've got one of the CRI vacuums, has a HEPA filter, and you've never replaced it, and you've had it for 4 years, you're not doing it right. The other thing, it says the vacuum bag should be emptied or replaced when half full. Why? Because when the vacuum bag gets over half full, you're spending more labor time and the unit can't filter properly. So if you went and spent the money for the machine, use it in the proper way. And this is what the law actually states, and it gives you the guidelines for doing that. When you're selecting your floor finish, here's some ideas about what you need to do. Select a floor finish that is free of the heavy metals, and these finishes need to be durable for stripping and recoating. I know that many of you that have tried green floor finishes in the past, I will tell you, in the last 3 to 4 years, green floor finishes have come a long way. But no matter what floor finish that you have, it's developing a good walk-off mat system, dust mopping and vacuuming. I think we talked about this in one of our other webinars. I know I have in some of the GCI webinars, but a grain of sand, just one grain of sand, Paul, has 36 cutting edges. 36 cutting edges. So if we can simply, change your finish if you can, but if you can't change your finish, put in mats that keep from deteriorating that floor finish. And sand comes in dry or wet. Don't use mats just during wet weather. And to help you to identify matting, we have a whole program listing from the outdoor to the vestibule to the indoor. And just like anything else on our standards program, you get points for having the right things in place. The last thing that we're going to touch on today that was part of the law is hand practices, hand care practices. And one of the things it says, use touch-free dispensers with long rolls of paper or high-efficiency air dryers. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I am a proponent of hand towels. And the reason I do is because, I watch a lot of people when they get through in the restroom and they do not actually wash their hands appropriately. So therefore, when they go and they touch that door handle or another door handle, what they're doing is they're actually taking those germs with them. I am a proponent of hand towels. That way I can go to the door, I have a towel there to protect myself, and in the 180 practices, we even give points for having a trash can near the door so I can throw that paper towel away. And one of the things I want to point out, folks, is that, you know, when you're looking at this, it says touch-free. That does not mean battery-operated automatic. This can be a mechanical dispenser where you simply grab the towel and you don't touch the dispenser. So, you know, they don't cost more. I think the whole thing you've heard us say several times is you don't have to do things that cost you money. You can do a lot of things that actually help you but don't cost funds.
Sure, the thing you just mentioned about the location of the trash can, close proximity to the door, that can promote environmental health as opposed to sitting several feet away.
Right. I mean, that's promoting good health. One of the things that we found out at a school that has been certified, they have the Green and Clean Institute seal, is when they've been developing their program from 2006 through 2009, they decided they wanted to find out exactly how this program affected their budget. And schools, as you already know, folks, is paid on a student sitting in the desk per day. And so what they did is they took the amount of students and certified staff that was in their facility, they took their expenditures on all of these products that Environmental Services uses, and they found out they were spending 21 cents per student per day. Now, as their green cleaning program materialized, they found out it went to 16, and it's kind of basically stayed at 16 cents. They've made all the changes that they can make, from the product and equipment. But one of the things they found out is since 2009, what they're working on is the labor issue. So you notice the very large disparity between labor and supplies. It shows that 97% of your labor in your building, if you're a superintendent or a principal, this is extremely important to you folks. 97% of your labor budget is on, or your custodial budget is on labor. That means only 3% is on what this law talks about. The major part of this law talks about only the 3%, not the 97%. One of the things is at the Green Clean Institute, we focus on the labor issue, understanding why we need things, why we need to use things, so that when we get the right products in place, then that way we can do it. And I think this is extremely important, Paul.
Well, and again, I think you look at those dollar amounts and in these tight economic times for all schools, it just makes so much more sense that whenever we're spending money on labor, we do it effectively and efficiently, and through training and communication and the things that we've talked about, David, is how we bring our staff up to that higher level to be as most effective as they can be.
This is the resources page that the law was put together, and you can go to the websites that are listed here. Rolla Public Schools has been very helpful with me over the years, has been doing green cleaning for now over 15 years, has a wealth of information, and was very helpful in helping me design and put together that slide that we just saw about the labor and the supplies.
And again, I think environmental health and education is so important. We need to maintain these environmentally healthy systems, and again, it reduces the potential for negative impacts on both custodial staff as well as the students. It's what this whole thing is about, to make for sure that we actually have that environment that creates a healthy learning environment, and it's just part of that holistic program.
Well, I think this is where we're talking about is environmental health. This isn't just the health of one person. This isn't the health of just the custodial staff. Everybody has to get involved. When you have a school, you've got to think more than just the students. I know they're our main reason for being there, but there's a lot of people that use that facility. And what we're finding out is when you really start looking at that, it says, and the occupants, not just the custodial staff. We want to reduce those negative impacts from everything that's going on, and it's far more than just the products that we use.
Again, as you said at the start of this webinar, David, it's about information, education, and communication. All three of those are important components to ensure that everybody's engaged appropriately and moving in that common direction concerning cleaning, green, environmental health in schools.
Well, and I think as we started, when we first started talking, Paul, is that 2008, a group of individuals in the state got together and put together the information. How much education has there been? How many people are actually using that? It's because they haven't been educated as to what the law really meant. There were some people that actually, when the law came out, thought that it had something to do with the Farm Bureau and that, because it was buried in this energy law. And I think this is the thing. We're trying to communicate to you folks that are watching today, or if you're watching the archive version, we're trying to communicate to you that environmental health is not always going to cost you money. And, I guess, it's always, as they've always said, you get what you pay for. And in this case, you don't even have to pay for this information. It's there. All you've got to do is use it and communicate what it can do for you.
And I think, David, if people would just go back and watch the webinar for last month and listen to some of those videos of some of the stakeholders, it's a no-brainer. The value of this and the benefit it brings to a school system, it's just a no-brainer that this is the way to go.
I think one of the things that I saw, right at the first when we put this law into place, and I've worked throughout the world with trying to help facilities go green and improve their environmental health, is that we needed a standard. We needed a way to track what we were doing. You need to know where you're at and where you're going. And the one thing the 180 Best Practice Standards does is it helps you get points for what you're doing right. It actually shows you, if you're going to make changes, where you might want to make the changes. And so now you have not only the guidelines, but you have a tracking program to help support that. And then once you do that, we're even going to bring that to the public so the public can be aware of what you, your school, your staff, your students, and that facility is actually achieving.
Again, this is webinar 6 in this series. Every month we do this webinar at the same time every month, and this is leading up to the fall conference that we're going to have.
And here's the website. So for you folks that haven't seen this, this is the Green Clean Institute's website. This is the page specifically for schools. You can actually go and view your webinars. If you want to take the test and you want to get the certification that Paul's going to talk about, you can go and buy the test. It's only $15 for 11 webinars. We're not talking about a huge expense. Great information. And then what you can do is Paul, there's a certification that they can get after they do the tests.
That's absolutely right. This fall, when we have our Safe Schools and Colleges Conference, October 1st to the 3rd. On the 3rd, we're going to be having a certification course that David's going to be running, and they can actually leverage participation in this webinar series to take part of that, take part in that certification at a reduced cost. And again, it'll give them some proof that, hey, that they're committed to cleaning green in their schools, promoting environmental health. And it's just a great opportunity for schools to actually try to engage and move forward in this area. Again, if you watch some of these webinars throughout the last couple of months, it's just a no-brainer that this is the way that our schools ought to be going.
Well, I think Paul and I'd like to say thank you for your participation in the webinar today. If you've been looking at the archive versions and you're up to date, we thank you for that participation. And if you're seeing this for the first time, we thank you for participating today and maybe encouraging others. You don't just have to be in a school. We're doing this webinar presentation basically for schools, but every single piece of information that we've talked about is applicable in any facility throughout the world.
Even your own home. Again, everything we talk about here, you can duplicate in your own home and make your own home environmentally safe and healthy. Again, next month our webinar is going to be on the 3rd Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. It's the 7th in this series, and the focus of this next webinar will be I Can't Breathe, Can You? Again, thank you for participating in this webinar series, and have a great day.